Today's video could be called the friendly federal killer. You could also say kind, conscientious, gentle, charming, and soulful psychopath. New details about the assassination attempt are coming to light. Last night, shots rang out just a few dozen meters from the President of the United States of America. A man armed with a shotgun, pistols, and several knives rushed at the security guards. A Secret Service agent fired at him at point-blank range and missed. He fired almost at point-blank range, apparently 4 times, and missed. You have to train for a long time to miss like that. After a brief commotion, about 20 seconds later, a cordon formed around the president. Both of them, along with the First Lady, were promptly escorted from the hall. So for today, we already know quite a lot about the suspect, his education, his manifesto, his route. Yesterday, we were told that he hadn't written anything, but today it turns out there's a manifesto, his thoughts. An even more uncomfortable question arises than simply who did this. And the question probably sounds like this: who created him? Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We will analyze this in great detail. And probably this is the most important question. But before we begin, remember one fact that we will reveal closer to the middle. This person did not write anything that could be considered extremist. Nothing that went beyond ordinary democratic rhetoric. It might be unusual for you and me, but for them, in their camp, in their circle, it's completely ordinary. He just took it literally. And when you hear this, you'll get truly scared. Not because he's crazy, but because he's not crazy. He's an ordinary, quiet, polite, and kind killer. So call Thomas Allen, 31 years old, Torrance, that's California. Let's start from the very beginning, because this man's biography is not the biography of a terrorist. It's the biography of the boy next door. His father, Thomas Allen, is an elder at the Protestant Reformed Church in Torrance. A devout family. When journalists came to the church the day after the assassination attempt, security guards stood at the entrance and didn't let the press in. The parishioners entered in silence with their heads bowed. Cole grew up in this church. He was raised here. During his student years, he was a member of the Caltech Christian Fellowship. On his LinkedIn page, there's a photo of him in a graduation gown, smiling, wearing a tie, and next to it a childhood photo, a little boy holding a plush rabbit. Caltech is not just a good university, it's one of the most challenging technical institutes in the world. Only about 1 out of 100 applicants gets in. He was admitted, graduated with a degree in engineering and mechanics, and then completed a master's in computer science at California State University, which he just finished in 1925. At the same time, he worked as a tutor at C2 Education, preparing kids for college admissions. In December 1924, the company named him Teacher of the Month. Excellent reviews. He developed video games, well, for fun, and at one time interned at NASA. By any standards, a successful young man, smart and educated. The only documented political action in his entire life is a $25 donation through Act Blue in support of Kamala Harris. October 1924. $25. Less than dinner at a cafe. After Trump's victory in the 1924 election, Allen wrote on his Twitter, "Trump's victory is like the Nazis coming to power." Not his own words, actually, but words he read every day in his feed. The Democrats, the Democratic Party leadership, kept putting them there all the time. He didn't write them. Then he left X to where most of those left liberal users went after Musk bought Twitter. That's what it's called. He created an account there, he read there, he reposted there, he commented there. Investigators who studied his account found that he literally reposted posts from all the leading Democratic politicians. Well, there's Raskin, a congressman, the very one who for months promoted the theory that Trump was connected to the Epstein case and personally covered up pedophilia. And Ocasio-Cortez, who called Trump a fascist. She called his regime Nazi. The usual liberal media who every day said that Trump was killing people at sea, starving children in migrant camps, and destroying democracy. Allende read this every day. He didn't just read it, he believed it. As someone who was used to drawing conclusions from data, so he got the data, drew a conclusion from it, and the data said, "You're facing a regime of killers." Yes, he was part of the movement called the Wide Awakes. Roughly speaking, the Awake Ones in Russian. It's a left liberal activist organization. He participated in the Action No Kings in California, a protest against the claim that Trump supposedly wants to become a king, a dictator, a tyrant. All these words, tyrant, fascist, pedophile, traitor, he heard them. Not from fringe figures, by the way. From senators, from congressmen, from New York Times columnists. And at some point, we don't know exactly when, something switched in his head. Something happened in his head, which is exactly what the Democrats were trying to achieve. Yes, he came to a conclusion, and it was a simple one. If there's a Nazi in front of you, you need to stop him. If there's a pedophile in front of you who kills children, you need to stop him. To stay silent means to become an accomplice. He wrote this in his manifesto, literally. Turning away when someone else is being oppressed is not Christian behavior. He also had Christian roots and talked about it, right? This is complicity in crimes. Here we should pause and talk about the manifesto in more detail, because this is the most important document in all of this. A few minutes before the attack, Allen sent it to his two brothers and his sister. His sister, Aubriana Allen, lives in Rockville, Maryland. His brother lives in Connecticut. The manifesto was signed. A friendly federal killer. Friendly federal assassin. Sounds like the name of a video game. Maybe that's how it was intended. Maybe he went crazy because of a video game. He started his manifesto with an apology. Let me begin by saying that I apologize to everyone whose trust I have betrayed. Well, like, he lied to his parents that he was going to an interview. He lied to his colleagues and students saying it was a personal crisis. He wrote there, "By the time you read this, it will really make sense. A perfect crisis, though self-inflicted." So he fantasized about this whole attack of his, and then he got down to business. The targets were Trump administration officials in descending order, that is, by position. From the president down to the lowest-ranking officials, he wrote that he didn't want to harm random people. He's a humanist. That's exactly why he chose a shotgun with buckshot, not with bullets. Less penetration through walls, because someone could accidentally get hit there, and with buckshot, no one will die except those in the hall. He wrote, "I'll still go through most of the people here to get to the targets if it turns out to be absolutely necessary." Well, something like that. I'll kill anyone along the way I can kill, on the grounds that most people chose to come to the speech of a pedophile. Rapists and traitors are thus accomplices. That's it. Well, I really hope it doesn't come to that. Those are his words. By the way, he hopes it won't come to that he'll only kill the president. Well, whatever. I don't understand. So he wrote down basically who he's going to take revenge for, right? For a person who was raped in a detention camp. For a fisherman who was executed without trial. I mean, you really have to believe such nonsense. Well, all right. A child blown up at school, right? Trump is to blame for that, and he's taking revenge for that child. Children who are being starved. A teenager being raped by criminals from this administration. All of these are specific political narratives that have been promoted for months in the Democratic media. The very same thing that the Democratic Party made its journalists, its elected officials, and other attack dogs say about Trump. This is exactly what gets sent out every day from the center of the Democratic Party as a digital memo for people to repeat to everyone who gets paid as a Democratic propagandist. Allen didn't make up any of this, not a single one of these disgusting, baseless claims. He just gathered them all in one place, made a list, and decided to take revenge. There's actually a very funny moment in the manifesto. I've never seen anything like it. He wrote a separate section, objections and rebuttals. So basically, he started a dialogue with himself, arguing with himself because, well, on one hand, he's this kind of Christian, and on the other hand, he's about to go out and kill. So on one hand, he says, it's wrong to go and kill, but on the other hand, it's necessary. Why? So, well, this is a maniac's approach to a moral dilemma. Another detail from the Manifesto. We'll reveal it right now because it's astonishing. He wrote that he was amazed at how poorly the hotel was guarded. Iranians, he writes, could have come in here with anything more powerful and no one would have noticed. But he smuggled in a big disassembled rifle. They could have brought in a howitzer, a mine, bombs, I don't know, right? He, a man who was planning an assassination, was shocked himself by the level of irresponsibility. Well, as they say, the level of security there, or rather the lack of it. By the way, I'm also completely shocked that during an armed conflict with a country that has already tried several times to send people here to kill the president, it turns out it's so easy to get to the president. Yes, one more thing that isn't directly related to our story. The day before yesterday, I posted my video message to people living in Los Angeles. I said that I would like to meet with a few of them in a relaxed, home-like setting if possible and have a conversation. I didn't mean going to their homes. I need this before starting a new project that I'm working on in addition to the main channel you're watching now. I said that I don't want to write out the criteria for the kind of people I'm looking for, and instead I'll ask 2 questions that I'll ask you to answer by email, which I also put in the first comment under the video. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I received more than 60 responses. Some were short and some were as long as half of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. But what is most disappointing is that 58 of them were from people living in Israel, Germany, Kazakhstan, and even Australia. At the same time, most of them understood that they would not be able to attend the friendly gathering. Once again, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who wrote. And once again, I want to say, under this video, the email address and the questions I want you to answer will be posted again. But if possible, please respond only if you're physically close enough to Los Angeles for this group to arrange a meeting. In fact, I suggest bringing your spouses and sitting down together over a cup of something. A meeting that I will try to make interesting for you and useful for myself. Well, now let's get back to our good killers. We are approaching the topic I promised to talk about, which is perhaps the most scandalous aspect of this truly astonishing story. How did Alan end up in this hotel in the first place? He bought a train ticket in Los Angeles, traveled to Chicago, changed trains, arrived in Washington, went into the hotel. This is Washington. One of the most famous hotels in the capital, I think. It's the regular venue for the White House Correspondents Association dinner, and he just stayed there for a while. On Friday, 24 hours before the President of the United States, the Vice President and a bunch of other people were supposed to come there. Alan's neighbor on the same floor, Daily Beast editor Hugh Doherty, gave an interview to the press the next day and said, "Guys, how is this even possible? That someone with a huge disassembled long-barreled rifle checked into the hotel where the president was supposed to speak the next day." He replied right away, "I can answer that for you now. No one even looked at my luggage on Friday afternoon." And his colleague, according to him, came in with his belongings without any problem at 5 p.m. on Saturday, 3 hours before the dinner started and before the president arrived. Alan brought the weapon in disassembled form and assembled it in his room. He put on a bulletproof vest and at 8:36 p.m. on Saturday left his room, went down the stairs, specifically the stairs. Investigators determined this from video recordings and rushed to the Secret Service checkpoint in the lobby. Trump described it the following day as follows. He started running from 50 yards away. He was running very fast. And now the main question. The whole internet today is asking, why didn't the Secret Service hit him? Can you even imagine that? According to CNN, citing sources in law enforcement, here's how it looked. Allen fired once, maybe twice, and a Secret Service agent fired back 3 or 4 times and didn't hit him even once. Allen didn't receive a single gunshot wound. He was taken to the hospital not because of a bullet, but for a checkup after being detained. That's standard procedure. One agent was grazed by Allen's bullet, which hit his bulletproof vest. So, 4 shots from a professional presidential security agent and not a single hit. How can this be explained? Maybe he got this job because he's a transgender man, has one leg, is of African descent, and is an alcoholic. But it's true under Biden they only hired people like that, right? It's been about a year since we should have started hiring regular people. And why didn't anyone else shoot? Well, in the video they're showing, there were at least 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 other agents there. They're all running with pistols. There's another question. How did it happen that the President and Vice President of the United States are together, and together outside the White House at that? I have a feeling that this is forbidden, if not by law, then by unwritten tradition and security practice. What if they're experienced? Both would die. The country would immediately lose 2 officials who are practically irreplaceable. Because the third president, the next in line, namely the Speaker of Congress, is much less informed about affairs than these 2. In the room located directly above the hall, judging by what we're told about the lack of security checks, a bomb could have been planted, and then we probably would have lost our entire government. And even getting rid of several hundred journalists and media outlets would not have compensated for the damage that would have been done. So, what happened? Well, there are several versions here. The first version, the official one, oh, there was chaos there. What? An enclosed space, a moving target, the danger of hitting people behind the attacker. They say that in such conditions, missing is normal. That's the explanation. It's a provisional made-up explanation, but it's not very reassuring, because agents of the Secret Service undergo years of training specifically for such scenarios. In other words, what they were trained for actually happened, and they failed. Second version. It is already being actively discussed in right-wing media, although it has not been officially confirmed anywhere. But was there an order to shoot to kill, or were the agents ordered to stop him but not to kill? This is an important question, because if you shoot with the intention to detain or eliminate, you aim differently. And in that case, misses are explained not by poor training, but simply by a different objective. We don't know if that's the case, but the question is being asked. The third version, a completely conspiratorial one. And we'll say this directly. A number of users on the internet are already writing that Allen was deliberately left alive because dead suspects mean the end of the investigation, while a living one means months of hearings and political battles. This is an unconfirmed version. It's what people are talking about, but we want you to have the full picture. If you're interested in what we do, by the way, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the bell if you want to get notifications about new videos, and most importantly, leave your comments. Argue with each other, ladies and gentlemen, share your opinions. We read everything. And it's from your comments that we understand what concerns you, what surprises you, and what you disagree with. This is a live conversation. Even when I, remind you that I don't reply to comments, yes, it's a live conversation in which you participate, and in this way you take part in creating new videos. We'll discuss something else near the end of the video. One of America's leading legal analysts is Professor Jonathan Turley. Today, he said something that made many people fall silent. He pointed out a connection that no one wants to talk about out loud. That's coming up. Let's return to the timeline. So, Avriana read the manifesto. She immediately called, and her brother in Connecticut also called the local police. The police passed the information to the Secret Service, but there were about 10 minutes between the manifesto being sent and the attack. He sent the manifesto to his 2 brothers and sister and left immediately. And that time wasn't enough, so to speak. By the time they started making contact, it was already happening. Avriana later told investigators that her brother had long been involved in this kind of radical activity. He constantly made statements saying he wanted to do something to fix the world. Well, he was a good person. She also reported that he bought 2 pistols and a shotgun. He kept them hidden at his parents' house, and they didn't know about it. He regularly went to the shooting range to practice. He trained methodically like a real tech guy. His video game, by the way, and these are the details everyone is discussing now, was called Boredom. One of the tags. On Steam, where it was sold, the tags were Bullet Hell and Shooter. We don't know what this says about his psychology, but it's an interesting fact. He bought the weapons legally, a shotgun in August 2025 and a semi-automatic pistol back in 2023. Maybe he didn't buy it for this purpose back in 2023. Everything was through a store, all registered, nothing criminal in his background, not a single charge, not a single fine. He was completely squeaky clean. Now the right-wing media's reaction. Here's where things get really interesting. So, Fox News, Twitch, Daily Wire, right-wing podcasters, they all did the same thing. They opened Allen's tweet archives and started comparing them to what leading Democratic politicians were saying. The result turned out to be, and this is no exaggeration, almost a word-for-word match. In other words, he had no original thoughts. There were no thoughts of his own. He was copying other people's thoughts. He was so brainwashed already that he just took them, mindlessly copied and pasted, took and pasted. Trump is Hitler. So who said that? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? So, repeatedly, Allen wrote, Trump is a pedophile connected to Epstein. Who was pushing this for months? Congressman Jamie Raskin publicly, in official statements. Allen wrote, the Trump regime kills people at sea, rapes migrants in camps, and starves children. And who was repeating this every day? The usual Democratic media, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and so on and so forth. Every day. Fox analysts asked directly, what's the difference between Allen and the average user of Blue Sky, that Twitter-like platform he migrated to, only that he believed in it so much that he went with a shotgun? Chairman of the Republican National Committee, Joe Gruters, issued a statement saying that yesterday's attempt on President Trump and members of his administration is the inevitable result of radicalized leftists who have normalized political violence. Democrats can talk all they want about their only action. They are telling the truth. Professor Turley, one of the most cited legal analysts in America who is hard to call a partisan, wrote something today that we promised to tell you about. He pointed out a specific mechanism. Congressman Raskin has publicly claimed for months that Trump is personally covering for Epstein, that his family and associates are involved in pedophilia, and that the administration is deliberately hiding files. This was not said in fringe outlets. It was said in official statements by a member of Congress. This, almost word for word, is exactly what appears in Allen's manifesto as one of the main justifications for his hatred and his attempted attack. Turley asked the question, is there a difference between Trump as a pedophile as political rhetoric and Trump as a pedophile as a motive for murder? If a person hears the first one often enough, he inevitably comes to the second. And what did the Democrats say about this? They all condemned the violence. That's standard and predictable. But when journalists started asking why this person decided to kill the president, problems began. Obama released a statement urging people to reject political violence and added, the motives are yet to be determined. How can they be determined? The manifesto has already been published. The motives are absolutely clear. CNN called Obama's response measured. The right called it wordplay. AKO wrote, there is no place for political violence. Everyone immediately remembered her. All previous statements that called for political violence, Raskin paused. Raskin has no relation to Ira and Volodya Raskin. Absolutely none. And they absolutely deny any kinship. Other Democrats focused on the topic, where funding for the Secret Service should come from, shifting away from the issue of rhetoric. Republican James Comer, the chairman of the Congressional Oversight Committee, demanded an immediate briefing from the Secret Service and pointed out, The DNR, including the Secret Service, has not been funded for 70 days. Democrats in Congress are blocking funding. It's time to stop playing games. Do you see where this leads? Trump gave 2 interviews on Fox News and CBS's 60 Minutes. In the Fox interview, he called Allen a sick person who hates Christians and said, "When you read his manifesto, you realize that he hates Christians. That's for sure." His sister or brother even complained about this to the authorities. In the CBS interview, there was a scandal. Host Norah O'Donnell began reading a fragment of the manifesto where Trump is called a pedophile rapist. Well, Trump interrupted her, of course, and said, "You are disgusting." He called the interview disgraceful and refused to continue in such a format. Vance called for a systematic investigation, security failures. Senator Tim Sheehy announced that he would introduce a bill to approve the construction of a presidential ballroom right on the grounds of the White House. Again, something that the Democrats have blocked. And Trump kept saying all the time, "You can't hold such events outside the White House. We need to hold them here. No. And no one is asking the government for money. Trump found people who are willing to contribute money and build it so that their names would be printed somewhere there. By the way, Trump has been promoting this project for several months now. A secure hall under the control of the Secret Service. No outsiders staying in neighboring rooms. Courts used to block this construction. Well, you know who the judges are. Now the political wind has changed. I don't think anyone would dare to block it. The international reaction was very interesting. Iranian officials remained silent. The forced diplomatic negotiations are in a very vulnerable state. A number of European left-wing media, however, reacted without condemnation, without sympathy, without emotion. Well, on several European social media platforms, messages appeared along the lines of, "You can understand him. Yes, you can understand him." They quickly deleted them. But the screenshots remained, gentlemen. Now about conspiracy theories. We're being honest, once again, the Iranians didn't even say anything, but the French, Germans, and English said, "You can understand him." Okay. They comment on different versions, unconfirmed and confirmed. So, that's it. And I'm telling you both the confirmed and unconfirmed versions, because it's better to hear it from me than from someplace where 200 people are shouting, "Yes, that's how it was." Yes, I'm telling you honestly, this is confirmed, this is not confirmed. The first coincidence I notice among many is that the assassination attempt happened on the very day the Iranian negotiations reached a deadlock. Trump canceled the delegation's visit to Islamabad at the last moment. On the same day, Russian Defense Minister Belousov flew to North Korea. 3 major geopolitical events and an assassination attempt in one day. Coincidence? I think it's a coincidence. But people like, so to speak, oh, the second one. Allen wrote in his manifesto that he was struck.
Отсутствием безопасности.
He spent a day in the hotel and no one checked his luggage. No one checked his room. This means that the Secret Service either didn't check the guest list or they checked it and found nothing. With all his statements about how Trump needs to be gotten rid of, that Trump is a pedophile. No. Yes? Lives 30 meters from Trump, right? He bought a shotgun a year ago, he has 2 legal pistols plus an extra one, he practiced at the shooting range, was part of activist groups, and publicly called Trump's victory the arrival of the Nazis, and his name didn't come up in any database, or maybe it did. The FBI has tools for monitoring social networks. They should have worked. Why didn't they work? Are the systems bad, or was there someone who didn't want them to work? The third option, it sounds crazy now, but we have to say it. Some people are wondering, was Allen part of a larger organization that just used him as a lone actor? His engineering precision, his knowledge of the target's vulnerabilities, the Iranians could have come in with anything, he said. His willingness to die. Doesn't that sound like someone who was trained by someone? Or is it just a very radicalized, naive, lonely person? We don't know. The investigation is ongoing. By the way, what do you think about this? Be sure to write in the comments. It's important. What will happen next? Allen is already charged. Use of a firearm, crime, committing a violent crime, assaulting a federal officer with a dangerous weapon, and most importantly, attempted assassination of the president. That's a life sentence. The hearings began on Monday. The investigation will be lengthy. The Secret Service is launching an internal audit. Director Sean Chiron has already stated that the multi-layered security system worked. Well, if by that you mean the president is alive. But that wording sounds like a stretch when a man with a shotgun stayed in that hotel for a whole day. The White House is calling an emergency meeting on security protocols at major presidential events. The ballroom on the White House grounds is now priority number 1. And here's what's important to understand in the end. Cool Allen is not a monster from another world. He's a product of our world. A world where normal politicians say abnormal things. A world where words like fascist, pedophile, and traitor are not accusations. Third, they don't require proof. They're just rhetorical tools in the fight for votes, which personally amazes me. A world where a smart, educated, generally normal person can take these words at face value and draw a logical conclusion from them. Evil must be destroyed. That doesn't mean the Democrats are to blame. Although it does mean the Democrats are to blame, it doesn't mean the rhetoric itself is to blame. It means that words have consequences. There are people who listen, who think, who are influenced, and who decide to take solving this problem into their own hands. And that's where it ends. Because we don't want to end on a note of fear. Look at what happened that night from another perspective. A Secret Service agent stood between the man with the shotgun and the president. He was shot in the vest, thankfully, and held his ground. Allen's brother read the manifesto and immediately called the police, even though it was his own brother. His sister, knowing about his weapons and his words, told the authorities about her concerns. The system, despite all its failures at the far reaches, did not break at the crucial moment. And in fact, that is America. Not the one in manifestos, not the one in tweets, but the one in actions. When everything goes wrong and you have to make a choice right now. America survived the assassination of Lincoln, survived the assassination of Kennedy, survived Watergate, the Vietnam protests, racial riots, and economic crises. September 11th. Every time it seemed like the country was falling apart, but every time there were people who made the right choice at the right moment, and the country moved forward. The country didn't lurch toward the dictatorship of the proletariat, or, for example, tyranny. We live in an era when information flows faster than the human brain can process it. When rhetoric reaches temperatures that the most vulnerable minds can't withstand. And that's the problem. It's a serious problem. But it can be solved not by bans and censorship, but through responsibility. Responsibility of politicians for their words. Media accountability for their narratives. Responsibility of each of us for what we say and what we believe in. This country has a future, a good future. Because even in the darkest night, there are people who do what needs to be done. An agent in a vest, a brother with a phone, a sister I spoke up for. Everything depends on people like that, and that's exactly why, no matter what, everything will be all right. And in my mind, I came to only one conclusion. It's time to bring to justice and seriously punish those who call their opponents pedophiles, fascists, murderers, and make baseless accusations against them. And prosecute them. Prosecute and punish them on the one hand with fines, so to speak. Well, in dollars, yes. And secondly, punish them with serious prison time, preferably in Siberia or Kolyma if possible. For this, we will even pay the Russian Federation for their upkeep in prisons. That's all. Until we meet again.